Excited to have my next guest on the show. It's John Castaneda, who picked up another big win, this time at UFC Vegas 74, a UD win over Muin Gafurov. John, how are you?
Ryan, I'm well. Thanks for having me on the show.
Yeah, I'm excited to talk to you again, man. At first, I want to start with, have you been told just how different you look with your mustache versus when you're cleanly shaven?
Yeah, I have. Actually, there was a little clip that the UFC, I think, had sent out, just a little promo, and it was when I didn't have my mustache, and so many people were contacting me like, "Hey, man, you got rid of the mustache? Like, you look like a 18-year-old like kid again, whatever, whatever." And I was like, "No, that's an old clip. I'm still rocking the mustache." So
Yeah, no, it stood out to me when I saw you in the cage. I was just like, man, it's such a difference, but it's a good difference. You look handsome either way, my man.
I
Let's
appreciate
talk.
you, brother. I appreciate you.
Of course, of course. Let's talk about the performance. Obviously, a UD win, very tough guy. It was a tough fight. This guy kept coming and coming. How happy are you with your performance?
Um, I'm content with it. I think that there's obviously always room for improvement when it comes to the performances. I really didn't anticipate Gafurov. Listen, I knew he was a Sambo champion. I knew he was a heavy-handed wrestler. He threw with power. I think that the circumstances behind his debut and the fight and everything kind of led him to fight that specific way, and which kind of led to the outcome of the fight as well. I think that his Tajikistan teammate, who had just fought just right before him, got the upset knockout win. It panned over to that stadium that Tajikistan fans had rented over in Tajikistan with, like, I think what I remember is like 140,000 people or something like that. So he's got a crazy following and like a whole country backing him. So when something like that happens, and then now it's your turn. Now here's your debut. It's like you want that crazy finish as well, and you want that strong finish. And so I I don't think either of us anticipated him kind of fighting the way that he did, but nonetheless, it was a fun fight.
Yeah, there's no doubt about that. Did you have a certain game plan going in? And then you talk about, being as fun of a fight as it was, as much pressure as he put on. How much did you have to deviate from your game plan if you did have one?
Yeah, no, a ton, absolutely. So my game plan was actually just um, be the pressure fighter, because I know that usually. So I watched his last three fights, and I actually watched one of them live for LFA. So I kind of knew a little bit about Gafurov. I never knew that up until 10 days ago, I never thought I'd be fighting him. But so I knew a little bit about him and his style, and I knew he was a heavy-handed fighter, but I kind of wanted to push the pace on him. And the reason why I say that is because his last three fights, he's kind of slowed down towards the middle of the fight and then ending in a very slower pace. In a sense of, like, he kind of uses a lot of his energy right off the bat, and then you can kind of push the pace on him. And I knew that I came into the fight in very, very good shape. So my anticipation was just to push the pace on him, be in his face. But his style of fighting and what he brought to that fight was really, really hard to do that. And it was really hard to get my offense going, to be honest. He was just throwing wild strikes from every single direction, both left-handed, right-handed, spinning attacks. And I was just like, all right, listen, within the first round, I was like, all right, I'm done with that game plan. Now I'm just going to kind of pick and choose my shots, be a little bit more strategic with my striking, and just be more conservative. I knew I was going to be able to tag him. I knew I had the advantage in the speed, and honestly, I knew that I had the advantage in the wrestling. He's a two-time world Sambo champion, but I have really good wrestling as well, and I stuffed all of his takedowns. He went 0 for 6 on wrestling takedowns, and I got 3 of my own, so I was able to push the pace on him and get the unanimous decision win.
You did land a pretty big head kick there with about like a minute 30 left in the first round. I
Yeah.
thought you were going to get the finish, man. Like run me through that. Do you feel like, looking back at it, that maybe you could have, or was it just he was playing really good defense? Like what was your whole thought process when that happened?
Yeah. So listen, I 100%, I feel like I could have gotten the finish, but this was my thought process throughout the entire time. Did you happen to watch my not my fight against Gafurov, but my most recent fight before that with Daniel Santos?
I
So
did.
in the first round, I landed 3 head kicks, and I absolutely went into like tunnel vision mode, and I was like, all right, we're gonna finish this right here, right now. And I did that. I absolutely just left it all out there. I was holding my breath. trying to get Daniel Santos out of there after I landed the head kick. And I think those head kicks are a little bit more flush and more clean. I had him rocked pretty good. And all I could think about when I landed that head kick on Gafurov was, don't Daniel Santos yourself, which is just basically telling myself, like, don't burn yourself out. Granted, I was actually fighting that Daniel Santos fight with an upper respiratory infection, which is actually why I was so tired, not because I left it all out there in the first round. But it was still something in the back of my mind. All I could think about after I hurt Gafurov was, all right, man, you did the damage, you got him down. Now pick your shots and don't overdo it. But I think that looking back on it now, I definitely could have been a little bit better as to kind of pushing the pace a little bit more in that finishing sequence.
Well, lessons learned for, moving forward as you continue to climb your rankings here in the UFC. Now, in the second round, the ref took a point for a headbutt from Gafurov. First off, how much, if at all, did the headbutt affect you? And secondly, were you surprised at the point being taken from it?
It didn't affect me at all. So it did connect, but it was a very mild connection. And to be honest, I was just more so thrown off. I was more so just irritated and pissed off. To an extent, I can understand, the nerves behind your UFC debut and all the pressure. You got a whole country of people watching you, and you got, you're anticipated to people. The UFC is already pushing you so much on your UFC debut. You just have so much nerves and jitters that he's going for illegal shots like that. And that's what upset me is man, calm yourself. There's no reason to kind of get that worked up over trying to finish me right now, especially if you don't even have me hurt. He was just kind of throwing, swinging, missing on all of his shots. And then all of a sudden just comes in lunging with his head. And I was just more so irritated than anything. But like I said, at the same time, I can't really blame him. He's got a lot of nerves riding on him. So.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Very, very well said. I love that answer. The mindset of yourself going into the third round. What did your corner say? You're clearly up on the scorecards. You definitely won the first round, and then the ref takes that point in the second round, so he needs a finish. What was your mindset going into the third?
My mindset was so clear in the third. My corner didn't tell me whether I was up or down, but they said, we're in a good spot, John. You should definitely push the pace on that guy and just be a little bit more technical. He's going to come. They basically told me, sorry, I think I got disconnected there. They basically told me that he's going to come for the finish. So just be a little bit more conservative, more defense, and, pick your shots accordingly and look for a finish yourself. And, I think in the third round is when my eyes were the most awake and most alert. Obviously through the fight, as the fight progressed, I was just kind of all right, I went into the third round and I was all right, I got this. This guy's clearly more tired than I am. I'm going to pick my shots. I'm going to out wrestle him this round, and I'm going to get the win. I'm going to obviously go for the finish if I can, but this guy was really, really tough. He was really resilient. I think, in my opinion, definitely one of the top guys in the world outside of the UFC. So now that he's in the UFC, I think he's going to have a really good career, but I wasn't the one.
Do you feel like you were maybe robbed a little bit of that fight of the night bonus? I know the co-main event was amazing, right? But you guys are pretty good too. Did you feel like you were in the running at least for that?
To be honest, yeah, I did. I 100% thought I was in the running for it for sure. But then I went back and actually I watched Caceres and Pineda, and it wasn't, it was a good fight as well, but it definitely wasn't as back and forth action as my fight. But you know what? I don't choose the bonuses, and I'm not going to complain. I got my 2 checks. I went home with a win. I'm happy. But yeah, obviously I wish I could have gotten that bonus.
Yeah. Okay. Fair enough. That's what I was thinking too, my man. I got a funny question for you, and I'm not poking fun. I'm legitimately just wondering if you can answer this for me. So I was watching the fight, and on Gafurov's back there, I didn't know if it was a bruise or if it was like a patch of hair. What was that? I couldn't tell.
I think it's a patch of hair, and actually I know it's a patch of hair because I saw it. And what's funny is that I first noticed it when I was watching film on him, and I was like, what is this going on his back? And it's just a random patch of hair, and I don't think he grows hair on any part of his back besides that part. And I think he just doesn't shave it. He just refuses to shave it. But it definitely is an uneven patch of hair, and then more power to him, whatever.
Yeah. it's super unique. If you see people with
It's
back
very
hair,
unique.
normally it's kind of like everywhere or whatever. So I didn't know what it was, and I was trying to figure it out. I was like, I think it's hair, but I don't know. Is
I
it a
saw
bruise?
I saw some comments on like Twitter, like whoever shaved Gafurov's back did him dirty or something like that. But I don't think he shaved his back. I don't think he shaved his back and like missed the spot. I think that's just how his hair grows year round. So I thought it was pretty funny too.
Yeah. Okay. Fair enough. More power to him. Like you said, my man. How'd you celebrate the win? What'd you guys do post fight?
Me and my management team and my team that was out in Vegas with me, we just went out to Evo Pie, this pizza place in Old Las Vegas, and then that's it. To be honest, the next day I went to bed right after that and got some good quality sleep. The next day we went and shot some guns at the Las Vegas shooting range, and then I went home a couple hours after that. Came back home, and I've just been hanging out with my puppies ever since in the backyard. So
That's awesome, man. What's the weather like? It looks nice there.
it does. Yeah, it is. Minnesota, Minneapolis right now, it's pretty gloomy. It's like 72 degrees, but it's about to start getting hot here probably within the next couple hours. So it's really good weather. Probably like 80s all week long.
All right, good for you. I'm jealous. I'm up here in the Northeast. It's rainy and gloomy right now, but well, I'll digress there. We talked a
Yeah.
little bit about your last fight, the round two loss to Daniel Santos. You said, earlier in the interview what you learned from that one. As far as kind of pacing yourself a little bit. Is there anything else that you can talk about that fight? I mean, you also talked about the was it the viral infection that you had? Did I
Yeah.
get that right?
Yeah. So yeah, a little bit about that. It's not so much about pacing myself because I feel like I have pretty good cardio in a sense of like I can let it out pretty much 100% in one round and recover pretty quickly. It was my lifestyle. Up until my Daniel Santos fight and the previous 6 years of my MMA career. So this is the first fight in the last 6 years that I haven't worked full time, that I haven't been working full time and trained full time. So up until that Daniel Santos fight, I was working full time, which is 42 to 45 hours a week. And I was training full time, which is another 30 to 35 hours a week. My job, which is the same job that I had for the last 6 years, required me to kind of stay up late nights. My shift was like I don't know if it's called the second shift or third shift, but I usually would get done around 3 o'clock at 3 in the morning, anywhere from 3 to 5 a.m. So doing that and then getting 3 to 4 hours of sleep and then trying to perform at a high level for my MMA practices at like 10 a.m. It was not the right move. It wasn't the right decision. I was always sick. I was always injured. I wasn't recovering well. I felt like my metabolism was slowed down tremendously. And yeah, so that up until that Daniel Santos fight, 3 weeks out from that fight, I had strep throat. I had strep throat for that Daniel Santos fight. So then I started taking antibiotics, which actually led to the fight being at a catch weight at 140. I was holding on to a little bit more weight than I would have liked to, and I was about a week out, and I actually requested that catch weight. I was planning on making 136 if I needed to, but I was just probably like 5 pounds heavier than I normally am. Because I'm very, very diligent with writing down my weights, what I'm eating, up until like 2 or 3 weeks out. So when I was about a week and a half out, I noticed that I was still roughly 5 pounds heavier than I normally am. So I requested that catch weight. Luckily, he accepted it. So the antibiotics, like I said, it kind of held on to a little bit extra weight. And then going into the fight, I felt fine. I felt good. My lungs felt like I had just gotten strep throat a couple weeks ago, but I was like, I'm good enough. And sure enough, after the fight, I just couldn't recover. After the fight, I was just like, I was down bad. My chest was super tight. My throat was really bad. I had a really bad cough that same night of my fight, I had that very bad cough. So then that following morning, I went to the ER. Turns out I had a respiratory infection, like an upper respiratory infection. So then that's kind of my decision. I was just like, man, if I'm going to be a full-time athlete, if I'm going to try to make a run in the rankings in the UFC, I need to either quit my job or do something. So that's what I did. I quit my job. I fully committed myself to MMA. I actually went to Thailand for 3.5 months and kind of just like rewired my brain as to like what it feels like to train full time and 2 to 3 times a day, sleep appropriately all day long, eat appropriately, recover, do all the right things. And luckily I kind of retrained my brain for 3 months, picked up those really good habits, and came back home and finished camp strong. So, like I've said in a couple interviews now that this is the first fight on my new contract. So I'm kind of reintroducing myself to the UFC. You know, this is going to be John 2.0 these next couple fights.
Yeah, man, I can't imagine how good you're going to be, 3, 6, 9 months down the line once you keep training full time. I mean,
Yeah,
that's a scary thought to think about the progress you can make.
absolutely. You know, and you're right, because it's only been, a short amount of time. It's been 4 or 5 months since I decided to actually make that commitment. So I think a lot of the times I was more so just doing camp just to get in fight shape. You know what I mean? But now it's like these last 5 months, I've actually noticed like my technique and my eyes gotten sharper, and my level of kind of like everything has kind of incrementally gone up, as opposed to kind of just remaining stagnant and just kind of training just to lose weight.
Mm.
So I'm excited too. I'm excited for these next couple of years. I feel like I'm in my prime right now. I still got a good amount of years left in my career, so I'm excited to see what I can do as well.
Tell me what you think of this bantamweight division. A lot of people says it's the best division in the UFC. Where do you think you fit in right now?
Yeah, so I think that the bantamweight division is hands down the toughest division in the UFC. I think that it just kind of shows, anybody in that top 10 spot can make a run for the title or fight for the title. We're definitely the most explosive and the most dangerous, and over the past few years, we've been developing, knockout power. We're the best scramblers, the strongest. I think everything about the bantamweight division is absolutely dangerous. I think that I'm maybe, one more win away from getting a top 15 opponent. And I was looking actually at the rankings maybe 2 nights ago. And, those 13, 14, 15 guys, who are they? I think they're Gutierrez and maybe Mario Bautista's in there. Who else is in there? I don't know. I was looking at these guys and I was like, man, these guys are very beatable. And I've been following their careers for a long time, and it'd be stupid of me not to kind of compare myself to these guys, and I absolutely do. And I think that these guys are all beatable, but like I said, only time will tell. Hopefully, I'm just maybe one win away from a shot at one of those guys.
Mario Batista's facing Cody Garbrandt at UFC Boston here in just a couple short months now. How do you see that fight going?
Mario Bautista. I've actually done some training with Mario Bautista over at the lab, so I think that these last like 3 years, I've been trying to manifest a fight against Cody Garbrandt, because I absolutely think that he's one of the most beatable guys in the bantamweight division. I think that he's definitely athletic, and I think he's definitely explosive. And when he's on for sure. But he's very chinny, and I think that I've kind of proven that I can find your chin no matter who you are. I'm going to find that chin, and I think that once I was trying to manifest a fight with Cody Garbrandt. Mario Bautista, he's on the up and up. He's a young up and comer. He's tough. He's resilient, and he's got a lot of momentum going. So I think he definitely takes that fight from Cody Garbrandt for sure. I think Cody Garbrandt probably is going to underestimate Bautista, but Bautista is a strong, good wrestler, good grappler, and he's got some heavy hands too. So I think Bautista takes it.
The main event of that card is Aljamain Sterling and Sean O'Malley for the title. Analyze that one for me. How do you think that's going to play out?
I'm done counting out Aljamain Sterling. I've done it a couple times, not recently, but I've done it a couple times against some big names, some good strikers. And listen, I know O'Malley is very dynamic on the feet, and he's very quick and super unorthodox striking. But I think that Aljamain Sterling is the same thing, but with his grappling. You know what I mean? I think he's deceptively strong and deceptively a really, really good jiu-jitsu player and a good grappler and a good strike. I'm sorry, not a good striker, but just everything about him is unorthodox as well. And I think that I think he finishes O'Malley within the first three, to be honest. I think he submits him.
And a lot of people think that Merab is the best 135er in the world right now, and obviously he's the champion's main training partner. I don't think that they're ever going to fight, right? Because Aljo's been talking about going up to featherweight. So let me just ask you this: I'm sure they know who the better one of the two is if they're sparring in camp. Who do you think the best bantamweight in the world is right now, regardless of titles or status?
I think Aljo is for sure. I think that they know. Like you said, they train together every single day. They spar, they wrestle. I think Aljo for sure is. The reason being is because honestly, Marab is super impressive. But I guess the most thing that's impressive about him is really his conditioning. He's got, in my opinion, the best conditioning in the UFC, the best gas tank in the UFC, and he's absolutely relentless. But when it comes to like actual technical standpoint in his striking and even honestly his wrestling, he's really not that good. Technically, I've actually watched a lot of his I've watched almost every single one of his fights and like try to break it down. And honestly, technically, he's not even that good of a wrestler. He's got the best wrestling stats, but it's not because of his wrestling technique. It's because of his gas tank. He's absolutely relentless, and he's so conditioned. I'm absolutely praising him for his conditioning because he does have, in my opinion, the best gas tank in the UFC. But technically wise, striking and wrestling, not really impressed. So whereas Aljamain Sterling, he's actually a technical grappler, and he's got some size for the bantamweight division. He's I've seen him at the PI a couple times, and he's big. He's a big boy for 35. Whereas Marab really isn't. So I think that on the everyday of those, I'd love to sit in on those training sessions and see. But I think that Aljo probably gets the better of him.
Okay, I would probably lean that way too.
Yeah.
Last couple of things for me, John. When is the perfect time frame for you to come back and fight? And is there an opponent, someone that maybe you'd like to call out?
Yeah. So I think, how we kind of just touched base a little bit on like just improving and stuff. I'm excited to kind of go back to training here this week and keep leveling up and keep training hard. I'd like to be back before September. It's June, so another 3 months, get back in there and stay active. I think that with being a full-time athlete now and training the right amount of time, sleeping and stuff like that, I'm walking a lot lighter. So normally on this day, any other fight, I'd already probably be 165 plus. But my weight's actually, I woke up this morning at 153. So, I'm ready to make weight next week if I have to again. So, I'm walking a lot leaner. I'm a lot healthier, both physically and mentally. So, I'd like to continue staying in good shape, continue training hard, and then hopefully in the next 3 months, get another fight on the books before summer ends. In a sense of opponent, I have no one really that I'd like to fight. I do have this like big thing though where I want to fight in front of people. I haven't had a chance to fight in front of people in the UFC yet. I got signed during COVID. My first fight was in Abu Dhabi with no people, closed audience. My next 2 fights after that were at the Apex, also closed audience with no people. And then obviously my last 2 fights were still fight nights with very, very limited people. I think it was just UFC personnel. I don't care who I fight, but I want to fight in front of people. I think that you can agree and many others can agree that my style is very entertaining. And I'm willing to exchange and stand in the fire on most of these fights. So I think that that's a good incentive to put me in front of some people. I thrive in front of people. I love fighting in front of people.
I would agree with that. If I had a direct line to Dana White, I'd make sure that he knows to put you on a big UFC pay-per-view card
Yeah.
so the whole world can enjoy your fighting style, John. Again, man, congrats on the win. Very impressive win over a tough guy. Great to talk to you again. Before we do sign off, I want to give you the floor. Tell people where they can follow you on social media. If you have anyone to thank, anything to plug, the floor is yours.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, obviously, first and foremost, thanks to Iridium Sports Agency and everyone at the Iridium House. Obviously, Jason and Jeremy at the very top there. My gym, my home gym at the Academy, the Minnesota Martial Arts Academy under Greg Nelson. Thanks to Bangtao MMA over in Phuket, Thailand. I did a lot of training over there with George and Frank Hickman over there. And then my wrestling coach and my main training partner, Joseph Deshu and Quang Lee. Those guys really helped me put it together this camp. You guys can follow me at John Castaneda _ on Instagram and Twitter.